The debate on Twitter. Well, we're back here next Sunday. See you then, 11 Eastern, with the latest buzz.
Government, there are lots of social issues that need to be addressed, and some residents say they feel the government is almost as hard on them as the terrorists. So it is a very tricky situation. Vows for revenge and pleas for change. But so far, it's not clear what the solution will be in the Sinai. Todd.
Tricky situation, to say the least. Amy Kellogg live for us in Milan this morning. Amy, thank you. Meantime, President Trump condemning the attack on the Egyptian mosque and demanding action be taken to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. Madison Giussiotto, columnist at the Washington Times and member of the National Diversity Coalition for the Trump Advisory Board, says it is time for the world to come together to take on these terrorists.
I think we're making great strides in this fight against radical Islamic terrorism, but I don't think it's nearly enough. If we look at last year alone, in 2016, 25,000 people across the world were killed by terrorism. Over half of these people were killed by radical Islamic terrorists. On top of that, 15,000 people were taken hostage or kidnapped. Over 2/3 of them were taken hostage or kidnapped by radical Islamic terrorism. And this is not just against Christians anymore. They're attacking their own.
President Trump doubling down, urging Alabama voters to pick Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore instead of Democrat Doug Jones. Our commander-in-chief slamming, quote, liberal Jones in a tweet, writing, "The last thing we need in Alabama and the U.S. Senate is a Schumer-Pelosi puppet who is weak on crime, weak on the border, bad for our military and our great vets, bad for our Second Amendment, and wants to raise taxes to the sky. Jones would be a disaster." The latest poll numbers have Republican candidate Moore slightly ahead of Jones. Moore, as you know, has been accused of inappropriate contact with minors nearly 4 decades ago, which he denies. Alabama's special election is scheduled for December 12th. Senator Al Franken vowing to return to work this morning. The Minnesota Democrat breaking his silence, saying he will not bow out over sexual misconduct allegations.
Have you talked about seriously resigning? Have you considered that?
No. The Ethics Committee is looking into all this, and I will cooperate fully with it. But listen, I know I have a lot of work to do to regain the trust of people I've let down.
Franken, who is accused of groping several women, going on to call himself a champion and ally of women. NFL protests showing no signs of slowing down. Roughly 24 players choosing to sit, kneel, or raise a fist during the national anthem on Sunday. Among them, Oakland Raiders running back Marshawn Lynch. This after President Trump called him out in a tweet for standing during the Mexican national anthem in Mexico City. That was last week, while sitting for ours. But fewer fans are showing up to watch these protests. Pictures of empty seats at stadiums across the country once again making the rounds on social media. A Fox News alert, ISIS fanatics calling for attacks on Christmas markets nearly 1 year from the deadly truck rampage in Berlin. Our next guest, a terror expert, says running and hiding is no longer an option. Plus, a battle over paintings with the Pentagon. The New York City College trying to profit off of art made by terrorists.
I'll never let go. I promise.
And the question everyone has been wondering for decades, at least 2 decades, in fact, why didn't Rose save Jack in Titanic? This morning, we have the answer. "14 minutes after the hour now, in the White House slamming Pakistan for letting a wanted terrorist go free. Hafiz Saeed was released from house arrest despite having a $10 million bounty on him. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders demanding Pakistan rearrest and charged him. Saeed is believed to be the terror mastermind behind the 2008 attacks in Mumbai, which left 166 people dead, including 6 Americans. A New York City college sparking outrage for trying to sell artwork created by suspected terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. The Pentagon demanding the taxpayer-funded John Jay College burn its collection of 36 paintings and sculptures. That exhibit, called Ode to the Sea, defended in a petition by a professor saying, quote, "Let them know that burning art is something done by fascist and terrorist regimes, but not by the American people." One of the artists is even suspected of working directly with the mastermind behind the 9/11 terror attacks. Nearly 70 victims of 9/11 were alumni of that very college. It's unclear if any of those paintings have been sold. A Fox News alert now. ISIS now setting its sights on Christmas markets, hoping to mimic the carnage of last year's truck attack in Berlin. But Christians aren't the only ones being targeted, and Egypt is now vowing revenge for Friday's bloody rampage at a packed mosque. So what needs to be done to crush the radical ideology? Here to discuss is former member of the Israeli Special Counter Operations Terrorism Unit, Aaron Cohen. Mr. Cohen, as always, good to see you here. And I'm going to start out with what Americans are worried about. What should our officials here in the U.S. be doing so that terror does not strike between now and Christmas?
Well, there's no way to stop terrorism. We haven't been able to stop it in Israel. We can slow it down. You slow it down by cranking up your intel gathering. Intelligence is the most critical layer of counterterror operations. You need actionable intelligence. So once you've got the intelligence game hammered down, then you can deploy military forces, special operations units to go and neutralize and kill those terrorist leaders. Those are what you want. That's what we want to do. We want to kill the terrorist leaders or capture them alive so that we can interrogate them and then prevent future attacks from happening here in the States. So I want to differentiate. Certain terrorists you want to kill, the mid-level ones. The leaders you want to capture so you can get more juice. You can squeeze them and you can prevent further attacks. The other thing that we need to be looking at here, since the intelligence in our country is still sort of finding itself. There's so many lone wolves out there. There's so much action we're seeing in Egypt right now. ISIS is still operating abroad. We need to bolster the defense while we're figuring out the intel. So what does that mean? It means that we need to get our soft target security up and increased incrementally and more aggressively, specifically for the holidays. And I mean that cities and counties, wherever there's crowds, there needs to be soft targets, security, and it's got to be armed security. It's got to be able to respond with a appropriate amount or more aggressive amount of force. So if somebody comes in shooting, you have to be able to respond with an equal amount or more aggressive amount of gunfire. So that means the private sector and releasing some federal money to be able to bolster the security specifically for the holidays here. That's where I come out.
Let's talk a little bit about your views on the private sector participating in this effort. Two questions. One, who pays for it and where are these individuals deployed?
Well, let's scrap the $7 billion waste of mall cop money that we're spending on the TSA. Let's squeeze them out. Let's hand that over to the FBI and let the federally trained professionals of the Federal Bureau of Investigation start to take over, or let them put together some kind of special security screening apparatus for the actual check-in. Stop looking for weapons, start looking at behavior. There's $7 billion or at least $3 billion that's released from there, and then start feeding that to the cities so that they can start giving out contracts to private sector companies that are hiring vets that can function under stress, that have been operating in forward areas, that are comfortable in and around terrorism. Get them armed, get them in uniform, and get them plainclothed, get them some additional active shooter response training. Start bolstering the private industry. I would start squeezing that money out of the TSA. You got $8 billion now, and we're still taking off our shoes, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of work to be done there, so we can start squeezing that money out from there. That's where I would go.
In the 15 seconds we have remaining, will the appropriate authorities take the steps that you recommend?
Probably not, and the reason why is there's a lot of steps that have to be done. So there's going to be a lot more of this run, hide, fight, report, situational awareness. We need to keep our eyes open and report. And the problem is it's not reporting and running and hiding doesn't stop the terrorists. So I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're going to see a lot of different things happening, particularly for these holidays. But hopefully by this time next year, we'll be having a different conversation. There'll be some more layers in place. I have faith in the president that he's aggressive, and that's a positive sign. So we'll see.
Aaron Cohen, insightful and eye-opening as always. Thank you very much, sir. Time now is 19 minutes after the hour. The accusations piling on, but Democrat John Conyers has at least one top Democrat in his corner.
Is it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country. He has done a great deal to protect women, Violence Against Women Act, which...
The big dodge from Nancy Pelosi, and the tables have turned on a nurse whose tweet about white women sparked outrage online. Carly Shimkus here with how she's being punished. When we come back. The nurse behind a controversial tweet no longer allowed to treat patients. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with a comment that set off a firestorm. Hey, Carly.
Big-time firestorm this weekend. That's right. Good morning, Todd. An Indiana University health night nurse came under fire after writing a controversial tweet about white people. Now, Taisha Baker, who goes by the name Night Nurse on Twitter, posted this on her social media account. Every white woman raises a detriment to society when they raise a son, someone with the highest propensity to be a terrorist, rapist, racist killer, and domestic violence all-star. Historically, every son you had should be sacrificed to the wolves. Well, a statement from Indiana University did not name any names, but they did say a recently hired IU health employee tied to troubling posts on social media this weekend is no longer an employee of IU Health. Social media, of course, chiming in on this one. Ralph says she should lose her nursing license forever. And another tweet says, seriously, I wouldn't let her near patients again. Anyone who would say this is not to be trusted to practice her professional faithfully. Yikes.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It's really a stain on a group of individuals that really do the Lord's work. Those night nurses are unbelievable.
Absolutely.
All right, this one, this guy's been on our air a lot, Ben Shapiro, and everybody seems to attack him. He seems like just such a nice guy.
Well, Deborah Messing, she is an outspoken liberal actress. She appears to be pretty angry with the New York Times because they profiled that conservative commentator that you just mentioned, Ben Shapiro. They promoted the profile in a tweet saying, Ben Shapiro is a hero to millennial conservatives looking for an alternative to Trump and Trumpism. That did not sit well with Messing, who said, uh-oh. She canceled her subscription. Ian on Twitter says, oh no, you saw a viewpoint that disagrees with yours, the horror. And James also chimed in saying, what, your echo chamber not soothing you with enough confirmation bias? Another tweet says, if you can't handle a profile on a relatively logical and milquetoast conservative like Shapiro, then that's really problematic. So that's kind of what you're saying there, Todd, that his viewpoints are really widely accepted by a large swath of this country. The other, though, not so much.
I love the way people call him anti-Semitic, yet he wears a yarmulke. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. And now there's this one. Speaking of wearing things, my guess is that somebody on Fox and Friends is going to want to get me in one of these at some point over the next 29 days.
I think we're going to see some Todd Pyro calves really soon. These, what you're looking at, Rompims. Remember those rompers for guys? They got a holiday makeover. Pretty pricey, too. These are $140, but if you get the Cyber Monday discount, you can snag them for $80. Edward on Twitter says, or Facebook rather, you can stop trying to make these a thing. It's not going to happen. Sorry, Edward, they really are going to happen because apparently according to some retailers, they are flying off the shelves. And you might just get one from me, Todd, in your Christmas stocking.
I thought we were friends.
Oh, we got to do it.
All right.
Got to get you in one.
I hope Edward's right. I hope this isn't a trend, but my gosh, I think I'm going to be in one. Shimkus, Carly Shimkus, as always, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be right back. A major battle brewing over who will lead the nation's consumer financial watchdog. The head of the Financial Protection Bureau filing a lawsuit after President Trump names his pick for top boss of the agency, championed by Democrats. Caroline Shively live in D.C. with details in the fight for control. Caroline.
Hi there, Todd. This morning we have one too many heads of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Leandra English is one of the two named to the acting position. And last night she filed a lawsuit to stop President Trump's appointment of his pick, White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney. English was appointed by former head Richard Cordray, and she would likely follow his lead of going hard at financial institutions, pushing for tougher regulations and enforcement with little oversight. Cordray was the head of the Bureau until Friday when he quit. The Dodd-Frank Act that created the agency says he can name his successor. Cordray is a hero for some watchdog groups and a major target of Republicans in the banking industry who say he has completely overstepped his mandate. One of those Republican critics has been Mick Mulvaney.
The place is just, it's a wonderful example of how a bureaucracy will function if it has no accountability to anybody. It turns up being a joke, and that's what the CFPB really has been in a sick, sad kind of way.
So who's the boss, English or Mulvaney? Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren backed English in this tweet, quote, "The Dodd-Frank Act is clear. If there is a CFPB director vacancy, the deputy director becomes acting director. Donald Trump can't override that." Oh, yeah? Well, here's Republican Senator John Thune.
The president's made this appointment. I suspect maybe that it gets litigated, that it ends up in court. But I think for the foreseeable future, at least, my expectation is that Mick Mulvaney will be in that job. But I hope in the end it results in reforms to that agency.
The suit asks for a judge to decide who becomes acting director and for a temporary restraining order to block Mulvaney from taking over before then. Todd?
It's a good time to be a lawyer in D.C., as it has been for, well, forever. Caroline Shively live for us in the nation's capital this morning. Caroline, thank you. A huge week ahead for tax reform. President Trump now planning to crash a Republican policy meeting tomorrow to get his tax cuts through by Christmas. And in the same day, he's also planning to meet with the big four congressional leaders. So, can they get it all done? Here to debate is Republican strategist Chris Prudhomme and Democratic strategist Sasha Burns. A very good morning to both of you. Chris, I will start it off with you. What happens this week? Do we get it done?
I certainly do believe we get it done. This is a major make-or-break week for Congress with a 17% approval rating. Look, this is a plan that is certainly has a little bit in it for everybody. The key focus for the White House is going to be the middle class. This is a tax plan that is specifically for the middle class. You have 86% of families with households under 100,000 who were affected by penalties, and you have another 58% of penalties collected from households who make less than $50,000 a year. This is the part of the individual repeal mandate that the president supports, and that is in the Senate bill that they certainly look at taking out. These are things that we have to certainly stop and make it easier for Americans to make money and to be more successful.
Sasha, same question to you. Do we get it done this week?
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to see a lot of blame going around and another stunning Republican defeat. The problem that McConnell has right now is he's decided to do the tax bill on a party line vote. To do that, you have to have your party in line, and he doesn't, starting from the top. So you have a total lack of leadership from Trump. If you look at his last 10 or so tweets, he's tweeted one about the tax bill, and it's that he hopes that the Senate Republicans can get this through. It's because he doesn't own it. You didn't see Cohn or Mnuchin out yesterday selling the bill, and there are about 25% of people who support it. That's less than his base. So the great irony of the salesman and the deal maker is that he doesn't sell, and the only deal he's ever cut has been with Democrats.
Okay, so Sasha, follow-up question to you. What does get done? Because we obviously have to worry about hurricane aid, avoiding the government shutdown coming up on December 8th, and border issues as well. What does get done between now and, let's say, the end of the year?
What's going to happen is, as you said, the big four are going to meet with Trump on Tuesday, and Schumer and Pelosi are going to sit Trump down and explain to him just how unpopular it's going to be if the government shuts down. And one thing that Trump really cares about is what people think of him. So once they do that, he's going to cut a deal with them as fast as you can imagine, and Dems will win a lot of priorities in terms of DACA and health care for kids. And, you know, big, beautiful year of Republican failures.
Chris, question to you. Do you see the Chuck and Nancy love fest with the president?
No, and certainly I can tell you going into the 2018 midterms, this is an important year for Republicans. Something is going to have to be accomplished, and I believe that's going to be tax reform. You already have, of course, we know we cannot count on Corker, Bob Flake, but then you have guys like Ron Johnson, who has particularly stated he's not overall pleased with the tax bill, but certainly in terms of small business budget plans to support it. So I certainly think we will get things accomplished, and it will be an effective year. This is something that is closest to home as for all Americans. When you look at, obviously, hurricane aid relief, of course, both sides of the aisle, I believe, can agree up on that. No one wants to have a government shutdown. That's obviously something that potentially may be kicked down to Christmas, worst case scenario, but I believe we will come to a comfortable solution with that as well.
Okay, we're talking solutions here. Quickly in the time we have remaining, Sasha, what does a potential deal with the Democrats look like? And then I'll follow up with Chris, what he thinks the ultimate tax reform bill looks like.
You get the extension for DACA. You don't get any funding for the wall. And you get a compromise and extension of the children's health care bill.
Chris?
Overall, at the worst case scenario, looking at a 50-50 vote, Pence will have to come in and, of course, break the tie. I certainly do believe that tax reform will go through. It's going to be a very challenging, tough week, but of course the president will be working the phones as well as the White House to get something done and accomplished.
That was a very civil debate between Chris and Sasha. Methinks it's not going to be the exact same way this week in the halls of Congress.
Being disagreeable,
right?
Todd.
You guys can. I just worry that our friends and representatives there in the nation's capital cannot. Chris Prudhomme, Sasha Burns, thank you very much for your times early on a Monday. A packed United Airlines plane forced to make an emergency landing overnight. The flight from Munich to Newark landing in London after reports that several passengers complained about feeling lightheaded. Emergency personnel quickly boarding the plane to check on passengers and evaluate them. No word on what was making those people feel sick. A teenager who's considered a person of interest in the death of his grandmother claims he did nothing wrong. 15-year-old Logan Mott arrested by Border Patrol agents at the Canadian border in Buffalo, New York, after driving a car all the way from Neptune Beach, Florida. Police finding what they believe to be his grandmother's body in the backyard of his home after Mott's father returned home from vacation and found his son missing. Mott has not been charged with her death, but is being held on a grand theft warrant. A brand new scathing report claiming the FBI didn't warn U.S. targets about Russian hackers. The feds accused of knowing for more than a year that personal emails were in the Kremlin sites. The victims included the former head of cybersecurity for the U.S. Air Force, an ex-director of the National Security Council, and a former top boss of the Defense Intelligence Agency. FBI has yet to respond to this report. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi coming to John Conyers' defense. The California Democrat even putting Conyers on a pedestal. Conyers, who stepped down from the Judiciary Committee over sexual assault allegations. Here's what Nancy Pelosi had to say about John Conyers.
We are strengthened by due process. Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country. He has done a great deal to protect women.
Conyers, who is under investigation by the Ethics Committee, is accused of using taxpayer dollars to settle sexual misconduct lawsuits. All right, a new Miss Universe has officially won the crown.
The new Miss Universe is South Africa.
Demi-Leigh Nel-Peters coming out on top, beating 92 contestants in several categories during the decade-old competition held on the Las Vegas Strip. 22-year-old winner is a business management graduate and is the second woman from South Africa to win. Colombia's Laura Gonzalez was named runner-up, with Davina Bennett of Jamaica taking third place. And if I'm not mistaken, our producer said Steve Harvey had a pretty good night as well. No mistakes. Time now, 39 minutes after the hour. One of the richest zip codes in America telling a church to stop feeding the homeless because it lures in the needy. You won't believe this one. And Charles Manson headed to Vegas, the eerie exhibit you can really sink your teeth into. Plus, put down the smartphones, pick up a bucket of chicken this holiday season. Yeah, the Internet Escape Pod just introduced courtesy of our friends at KFC.
I'm stronger than I've been before. This is the part when I break free. 'Cause I can...
42 minutes after the hour now on a Monday morning, a controversial request raising eyebrows after a church is forced to stop helping the needy in one of the biggest welfare states. The mayor of Malibu, California, now backtracking his claims. The city told the Malibu United Methodist Church to stop serving meals because they are increasing homelessness. Church leaders who have been feeding the homeless for the past 3 years forced now to find a place away from the church and neighborhood homes. This as LA County's homeless epidemic reaches nearly 30,000 people. And get this, Russia is certainly not loving it. A bill by the country's lawmakers requiring all American news organizations to register as foreign agents may now expand to include fast food chains. The proposal accuses restaurants like McDonald's of having manipulative and misleading advertisements by portraying food that negatively affects health, but in a positive light. Vladimir Putin expected to sign that proposed law. A Fox Business alert now. Bargain hunters, get ready to click. Those deals aren't over yet. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here with record-breaking sales expected today here on Cyber Monday. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. Happy Cyber Monday to you.
Happy Cyber Monday to you.
It is expected to be a record-breaking day. The Super Bowl of shopping, as we'll call it now, with $6.6 billion in sales expected today on Cyber Monday. That's compared to $5 billion spent this past Friday, Black Friday, on online shopping. And this Cyber Monday deals that we're seeing now, we're expecting that's double the price of what we spent last year. So it's going to be a record-breaking day. And Adobe Analytics, they're expecting about $107.4 billion to be spent overall this holiday season online.
Wow, that is
Huge.
Remarkable. I want to go into this one. If you've seen a lot of the KFC commercials, they have these really good comedians dressing up as Colonel Sanders, and they're continuing in the comedy business, it seems, offering a $10,000, quote, internet escape pod.
Yes, because sometimes you just need to get away from it all. So on KFC's online store today for Cyber Monday, they're offering a special deal on this internet escape pod. $10,000, marked down from $96,000. It's a real steal there. But there you go. You can go inside that little KFC pod with Colonel Sanders, you know, giving you a little hug on top.